Namaste. Welcome to Tale of Inner Journey. Today our special guests. I am using the word guests because we have two very special, distinguished friends. These two are one of my very, very close friends, and I have been wanting to introduce them to you for a long time, and today it's our honor to introduce these two beautiful women. They come from totally diverse background, but they have come to one common goal to take that goal further and help people through their work. And we will be here today talking to them and learning what was their journey, how they did it, what made them very special, and from nowhere to somewhere where they reached. So it's my great honor and pleasure to welcome Laura and Courtney. Okay, namaste and welcome to the Tale of the Inner Journey. And hope you are doing good and everything is okay with you guys.
Yeah.
Cool. Now, I will, this is the first time I'm doing two at a time. So always one to one. So who answers first, who answers second, it can be however it is. And sometimes I may ask specific to directly to somebody. So then we will see. But my very first question is, what is that, or how did you realize that there is something different in you? There is something, I am not part of the mainstream. I have to go in a different direction. How did that realization, how did that coming to the different untrodden path happen to you?
For me, it actually happened through physical illness.
Mm-hmm.
I had been in a really toxic relationship and was working a job that definitely didn't align with my integrity and my truth. And my body started to break down. I started to, all kinds of stuff. I mean, food allergies, depression. I saw doctors everywhere. I saw specialists. I saw healers. No one could help me. Like, your hormones are a mess. Like, nobody could diagnose what it was. It was just, you have an autoimmune disease. Your body's attacking itself was like the answer. So cut out all these foods, take this medicine, get on antidepressants. You know, they were all kind of the same words. And I was maybe in my late 20s, early 30s. And so what I started to notice after years of this was when I was away from certain people or I take time off my job, I'd get a lot better. Like, I'd get healthier. And so I started to notice if I remove myself or eliminate these things that are toxic, like I started to be able to recognize almost like I was eliminating foods. Okay, when I eat gluten, I feel this way. When I eat sugar, I feel this way. Like, my body was becoming really sensitive to foods. And then I just started doing it with my environment. And when I started doing that, I was like, whoa, there's something here. And I had been really quite healthy most of my life. So I had a baseline. I understood what health was. So to go from really healthy to really sick, you know, after 20 years of life was really hard for me. So I really wanted my health back. And I wanted my health back more than I wanted money, or more than I wanted my marriage, or more than anything, because without my health, I was nothing. I was bedridden. I was depressed. I was sick. So I started slowly eliminating these things, and it was really scary. But at the same time, being sick was far scarier. And I had always had an interest in, I'd been a meditator since I was 14, which is like another interesting part of the story. I had gone through a major surgery as a teenager and came out of the surgery and really didn't take well to it. My personality had changed. So my parents sent me away to like an alternative boarding school for bad kids, essentially. And in this alternative boarding school, we meditated every day. We read kind of classic novels, and we worked with our hands, and we worked on a farm, and we were in touch with the land. And so at the age of 14, I started meditating. So at the age of 14, through this like kind of unfortunate event, I found meditation. So by the time I'm 20, I'm pretty in tune with my body, and then this sickness happens. So I had been working in politics.
How did that transformation, how did that the toxic relationship, the childhood surgery, boarding school, how did that make you realize that this is not, uh, this is my path, this is where I want to go? Once you realize that, yes, I don't want this.
Yeah.
So then what made you say like, okay, now I'm going this direction?
So I remember I was actually on a plane leaving. I'm from Alaska, and I've lived in Alaska most of my life. And I was flying to Chicago for my grandmother's funeral. And I was reading a book. The book's a little fictional story called Illusions by Richard Bach. And the idea of the story is kind of we create our own reality. And I remember reading that and stopping and closing the book and almost like taking this gasp, this like breath. I don't know where I was in the air, but I was like, I've created all of this. Like I created all of this through my actions, like through my small day-to-day choices, through not speaking my truth in my work, through not speaking my truth in my marriage, through, continuing to stay in a toxic environment in my marriage, continuing to stay in a toxic environment in my job. It wasn't a conscious choice prior to this moment, but after this moment, it became conscious. And once I became conscious of it, there was kind of no turning back. So at that point, I was like, all right, well, I've spun myself into this situation. How do I unspin it? And it's still unspinning. I mean, it's been 7 years of unspinning, and I'm not sure it ever stops. Like it's slowed down, but it's essentially self-undoing. So I had been a yoga practitioner for a long time and a meditator, and I'd always wanted to go to India and spend like an extended amount of time. So I saved money, and that felt more valuable to me than a nice car or, new clothes. And I left him for a year. I traveled and lived in India, and that's actually where I met you, Kumar. And you have helped me so much, with so much of the self-undoing. And it's so interesting because I look back thinking I initially like left for India, and I was like, I'm going to heal. There's going to be this end goal, and I'm going to come back, and then I'm going to move forward in life. And it didn't work that way. It still doesn't work that way. In my experience, it's a path of just surrendering over and over to what's in front of me. And some of the wisdom that I feel like I've learned over the last 7 years is I don't have control. I mean, I do to a certain extent, but I really, there's a Zen saying that says, if your mind is in the future, you're anxious. If your mind is in the past, you're depressed. And maybe people kind of lean to, anxiety or depression, one more the other. I'm definitely the anxious one. I'm definitely in the future. I'm definitely trying to control everything. And in ways like I didn't even see. So the self-undoing is still taking place. Maybe not as, intensely as it was for a good 5 or 6 years, but I don't know if it ever stops. But that's kind of the gist of my journey, really, from the age of 14 to 40.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay. Laura, would you like to share what you went through?
Sure. Well, mine was not something so obvious, like a illness or something that there was not something that defined my life, like a before or an after. I just started to notice since I was a little kid, I started to notice that whatever I wanted or to bring into my life, little things, kid things, or suddenly they started to happen. So I actually have never said this out loud, but I think it started like a in a path of manifesting things. That's how I started to realize, like, oh, this is strange. And then also noticing that around me, like the people around me, we never talked about this, like my friends. It was not like a conversation. And whenever I would try to say something, because I was a really shy kid, so I really didn't express myself like, hey, I tried this and it worked, or anything like that. But whenever I kind of tried to see if someone else was going through the same thing, I didn't have the feeling that it was that way. So, but back then I really didn't recognize anything. I just started to, let's say, I'm going to use the word manifest, even though it can be a little tricky, but I'm just going to say it that way. So basically, wishing things, desiring things with all my life, and then bringing them to me. And so it started very little by little. And then, I don't know, when I started to grow up, I actually went through a very difficult teenage years. I felt really, really misunderstood. I felt really sometimes depressed. It was really difficult for me. My relationship with my entire family was kind of broken in all ways. And anyways, like, it's just things, normal things that happen. Then it reached a point where I started to bring things into my life that were a little more obvious and more significant. Like, for example, I would say, I want this job, and I would get that job. Or I want to go to Italy for, a semester or whatever, and it would happen. I went to London to work to get a job there, and it just happened. And so it was not a long time ago when I actually went back to that childhood memory of like, hey, I think I've always done this. I think I've always been wishing things, and then it suddenly appears. So I would say that for me, it didn't start necessarily as a healing journey. That's not how it started. It started with me realizing, like you said, no, what made you realize you're a little like different in that sense? It started by bringing things to my life. And the healing started, I kind of found the healing in the journey.
Yep.
Because now in hindsight, I can see how all these little things, everything, even just, I had a boyfriend when I was very young, and we were together for 6 years. And there was a moment in my life where I really just thought, is this it? So 6 years with my boyfriend, everything's great. There's no reason to break up with him. Everything is perfect. Is this it? Am I just going to marry him and have kids and never leave my town? And there was this moment where I was like, no way, Jose, this is not going to happen this way. Like, this cannot be it. There's so much more to life than this. And actually, that's when I went to Italy. That was my first kind of, let's call it, runaway from town. And this is when I went to Italy, it's when I started to explore the world. This was when I was in college. But this was my first spark of there's so much more, and I started to just explore. Now in hindsight, I can see that all the little things, they just brought me to India. That's how I see it. All these little things brought me to India. Kind of like what Courtney said, India, we see India as a final destination, even though it's not even close. But in India is when I really started my healing journey, and I started to realize how much I had to heal. And so it's two different journeys, I think, like a manifesting journey and a healing journey. But we believe that, Courtney and I, in our business, we keep telling, it's not about what you want to bring into your life. It's if you believe that you can have it. And I think this is where the healing is, if I don't think that I'm worthy of these things, if I don't think that I deserve these things, if I just, yeah, if I hate myself or all of that, like nothing that I want is actually going to come to fruition because I don't believe it's actually going to happen. And I think a key for my life is that I've always believed it's possible. I don't know why. I don't attribute that to myself. You know, it's not that I earned it. I didn't earn that. Somehow I came to this life having that. And I think my journey in this life is something different than that. It's kind of just, it's hard actually. I don't really can't pinpoint what the journey, but it's not about believing that it's possible. That I already know. It's about healing all the little trash that's in the way. And I'm still there. I'm still in the process. When I met you, that was the biggest transformational time I've ever had in my life up until now. And I don't know if anything is going to top it up ever. But we're still, luckily, I mean, look at us, we're still here. and it's still going.
I want to ask one question in this area. You were mentioning something which is very important because there is something I don't know. I want to dig it out if it is possible. You said, I would wish and it would happen. Many times it happened. Did you ever realize how the magic was happening? What was that which was the click? Or it's like still unknown area, you don't want to go into it and jinx it or something like that?
No. The only thing that comes to my mind right now when you ask the question is just faith. When I was a little kid, it was through prayer.
Mm-hmm.
And I grew up Catholic. I was raised Catholic. And so I would pray. Actually, I would pray to angels. I had this big painting of an angel, and the angel was holding two kids, one on each hand. Mm-hmm. And I would love it. It was so big, and it was in my closet. I had like a little walk-in closet. And whenever I wanted something, I would go to my closet because that was also my, like my little cave. By the way, I didn't know what introvert was back then or extrovert. I just thought I was shy and quiet and weird. And so I would go to my closet and I would just stare at that big angel with two kids and I would just pray. And later, I mean, things changed when I grew up, but I think it's always back to just faith, and not necessarily faith in a religious way, just faith. And it kind of goes back again to just this belief that I don't know where it came from, that like it is possible. Like there's so much more than there is something that there's so much more than our minds cannot grasp. And I still don't know what that is, if that's the question. I still don't know. It's so vast and so big. And I think that's been my search. Actually, now that I think about it. Like, what is that? What is that makes us so powerful, makes us connect to the universe in such a way, makes us make everything synchronize for us. Mm-hmm. So yes, I don't know the answer. I just realized.
That's perfect. That's how it is, because we don't know the answer. And once we settle into that, I don't know the answer, we can relax. That brings a beautiful, deep relaxation, that part of I don't know. But there is one thing which keeps coming into my mind again and again, which is, two things. One, as Courtney was mentioning earlier, I couldn't speak my truth. We all do this. I don't know, I haven't seen anybody who doesn't do it. We don't say what actually we feel. I feel something, I want to say it, but I don't say it. But logically, we know if I say, nothing is going to happen. But why do we do that? Can you see? Because I want to know it from both of you. Why do we not speak of it? What stops us? Okay, Courtney.
For me, it was programming. Like, and this is something.
Okay, at the time you didn't know you were programmed when you were not speaking your truth, right? Looking back, you can. Looking back, you can say now I was programmed that way, but then you didn't speak.
No.
If you go back into that moment, like maybe 5 years before or 10 years, 12 years before, what was that younger Courtney was stuck with? Why couldn't she speak?
Yeah, this is actually really interesting because this component actually has been my biggest self-undoing, and it's really been the last year for me. And that is so I feel like part of the reason I'm here on this planet, and part of like this incarnation for me, is to heal myself as much as possible, and then generational trauma, and especially in the lineage of women in my family.
Mm-hmm.
So looking at the women in my family, because these mannerisms and like what we're taught is passed down. My behavior is part of my great grandmother's behavior. She behaved like she had the similar ideologies. I went to my grandmother, they went to my mom, and they're in me. So a big part of this in my family, which I was also raised Catholic, is this idea of how a woman should behave. Like, what's a good girl? And how does a good girl, like a good girl doesn't rock the boat. Like she pacifies everything. She keeps everybody happy. Like the man's upset, let's make sure he's okay. Like somebody else needs this. It's this idea of like, and I watched it in my mother, and I watched it in my grandmother, and I see it in my aunts. Give of yourself to the point of exhaustion, and don't expect anything in return. Like no receiving, just an outpour of energy and an outpour of peacekeeping and self-giving. Mm-hmm. And this, I believe, is part of what made me sick. And this is also part of what didn't allow me to speak my truth. Is I was terrified to rock the boat. I couldn't handle being in a situation of disappointing others, because I was never told like it's okay to disappoint others, nor was it modeled to me by any women that I knew of disappointing others. And the women that I did know that were disappointing others scared me, because they were considered, bad or bitchy, or there's a formula around it, like there's words around this. So and I couldn't see this even at the beginning of my healing journey. It's really just been kind of the last year of looking at myself and being like, whoa. And so I feel like as layers came off, and you said this to me once, Kumar, I remember we did so much work around the feminine in me, and I really like the women in my family, my mother and my grandmother, and I really thought that that was like more damaging part of my childhood. And then I came to you in India like 2 years ago, just in tears, and I was like, I think I've been more damaged by men than women. And you were like, yes, we start with what's easier first. You healed a part of that, and now you're moving into the more difficult. And as I've peeled that back, it goes back to like, I'm the orchestrator of this. Like my actions are my behavior, like what I do, what I say, how I behave, pulls certain events and people toward me. Mm-hmm. Kind of going back to like what Laura said, like we're always manifesting, like we're always creating with other people. We're pulling events, yep, situations toward us. And boundaries is a huge one for me. And I am tested on boundaries, if not weekly, then sometimes daily, with people just wanting to cross my boundaries. And that is just something for me. That's a hard thing for me. And it's something that I've worked on. And that goes around back to this good girl idea, because the good girl doesn't have boundaries, and the good girl gives of herself until depletion. And so I'm constantly, these people are constantly coming to me, and Laura will even say, she's like, I've never seen anything like it. Like people just don't stop trying to invade your space or your boundaries or push you to your limit. And getting comfortable with saying no. So that's been and I wanted to go back to like the question and make sure I answered it.
Yeah,
I think
okay. Yeah, you pretty much said it. Laura, you want to say anything in that area?
In Courtney's, regarding Courtney's?
No.
Sorry? Oh,
Original question.
because regarding Courtney's story, it is really crazy. She gets so tested so much. For me, I think it's just very simple. I've always had this thought or belief or idea that people are really not interested in what I have to say. And I think this has just defined my entire life. This has defined why I've been so shy as a little girl, why I kept a lot of things to myself, why really my parents didn't really know much about me in depth. You know, of course parents know us, but I really never expressed how I was feeling, if I was sad, if I was whatever I was, angry. And so to date, I don't even know. I mean, my mom really knows me a lot. She knows how to read me. She just feels something. It's like the mother instinct. But I really don't know if they really know me. And I think I kind of blame that on myself, not in a bad way, you know, like I wasn't conscious of it back then, but it's because I didn't express it. So there's been a long journey for me to identify this because, like I said before, I didn't wrap that up, but I had a difficult adolescence. I had a difficult teenage years. And my biggest problem in those teenage years was that, I mean, in my head, the problem in my head was like, nobody understands me. That was the biggest thing. Nobody understands me. The world doesn't understand me. I don't know, like, I want to just disappear. So that was part of the time what I was thinking. And actually, when we started working on that together, I realized that it's not that the world doesn't understand me, is that I haven't been able to communicate to the world who I am, or, you know, in that sense. So, yeah, it's as simple as I thought nobody was interested in what I had to say. So I just brought it back.
When, for example, when we realize, like, as we are talking, like sometimes you suddenly realize this is exactly what I did not know then, now I know it. Some understanding happens. But I want to know what exactly you feel inside in that moment when you get it. When the click happens, when you know it, do you have any way to express that, how you feel that, what is that inside?
Yeah. So it's hard to put it in words because it's not something that we have been taught to put it in a language. It's not something we've taught at all. The only way I can describe it is I feel my entire body understanding. So it's not my mind understanding. It's kind of like I feel like a whole energy, a whole something, kind of like I have goosebumps all over my body. Like if every single cell of my body is saying, oh yes, I got it now. I understand it now. And this is the only way I can imagine it. It's like kind of a visualization, like all the cells, all the organs, everything saying, yes, finally, you know, you got it. And there's like a feeling, like I called it energy right now, but I don't know what it is. It's a sensation in the entire body of kind of like synchronizing and agreeing. And yeah, I don't know.
This is what I am looking for. This is the kind of the most cherished moments.
Yeah.
Can you say something on that, Courtney?
Yeah, so actually, to describe it,
Yeah.
I was going to use a story that happened to me, and maybe that can help define it.
Yeah.
Um, so it's very, my experience is very similar to Laura's. Like, it's a full being knowing, and it's an intuitive knowing, and it's just clear and there's no doubt. And so actually, just an example of this in my life was my husband had been cheating on me. I had no proof of this, but I knew. And I asked him about it, and he said, you're crazy. Like, where are you getting this from? Absolutely not. And I remember just laying there and being like, I know this with every being. And the reason that I say this is I feel like every person has had this intuitive experience. Like, I know that this person, there's something not right about this person. There's something not right about this situation. And so long story short, I ended up having proof that he had cheated on me. And I remember actually when I found the proof, all there was relief in my body because I wasn't crazy, because my intuition, which is something that I very much rely on, wasn't off. And so the same thing with this knowing, it's that same sort of just, and for me, working with my intuition very much aligns with working with my truth.
Mm-hmm.
The more I'm in integrity in my life and the more I'm in my truth, the stronger my intuition becomes. And there's times when I'm not aligned with my truth, things are a little more confusing and the intuition, isn't quite as strong. And so that's kind of the muscle that I use, in going through things. But for me, it's the same thing. It's just that knowing. I know that's a bad person. Like, that doesn't feel right for me. And I believe as human beings, we're installed with this at birth. Like, I believe everybody has it. It's one of our senses, the intuition. And so that's what it feels like.
Everybody has it. Like, you all have it. I have it. Everybody has it. But still, why, according to you, why do we not give it a chance? Why do we hide it? Why we don't listen to it? Because it's one of the greatest help anybody can have on the planet. And still we just ignore it and go and fall down. Why do we do that?
I have a current story of this, actually.
Okay, go ahead.
So I'm dating, and something else. And so after quite a bit of dating, I ended up meeting a guy, and he's great. I couldn't have written him better. Like, I mean, just absolutely perfect.
Cool.
Except for one little part, of course. He's still very much involved and attached to his ex-wife. They're divorced, but they have children together. And she still, and through the interaction with the children, she still very much controls what he says or does. So it's very interesting because there was part of me, and I was talking to my Zen teacher about this. He's like, you just kind of want to go back to sleep, don't you? It's like, it'd be a lot easier to just roll over and be like, this will change. They're not married. Yeah. The children will grow, everything will change. But it affects the way that he interacts with me. Mm-hmm. And so I have two choices. And I feel like the easier choice actually is to just go for what I want. And what I want is him because he's ideal. But the reality of the situation is my question, like my integrity question that I always go back to is, how do I want to live my life? Like, how do I want to live my life? And I don't want to live my life feeling that way, feeling like I'm a secret from the ex-wife, or feeling like I'm being tiptoed around, or that my emotions come second. And so when I can get clear on that, I don't have a choice in going forward. However, even 3 years ago, after all the work I've done, I probably still would have walked into this with some denial in my mind. And so I wanted to use that example because I feel like we really talk ourselves into things. And you said something to me, Kumar, that stays with me so often. You said, when the mind is in charge, there's a long story with lots of facets. He's not married to his ex-wife. He's really nice. Like, this could change. That's the mind. But when the intuition or the heart is involved, it's a whisper. And and the whisper to me in this situation is, no, like I'm second best, like, and that's softer. And so the intuition speaks softer than the mind. And we tend to go with the mind because we're encouraged to go with the mind. I mean, that's part of the programming, and that's also part of society. Everybody else is going on this logical tangent, like, why shouldn't I? But in reality, it's coming back to like those decisions of like, if you get quiet enough, which we're not super quiet. When you get quiet enough, it will speak to you. The truth will speak, and then the choice is following it. And it doesn't force you. The mind will force. The intuition is the softness.
Just on the lighter note, I'll
Mhm.
come back to Laura after this. Maybe in a week or so, we will put this interview on the YouTube. And what if he watches this?
I mean, he knows. That I've spoken the truth. If he's watching it, hello. I mean, and that kind of goes back to my truth because, and I have a really good girlfriend here who's going through a really toxic divorce. It really reminds me a lot of my divorce. And her husband was quite abusive, and he's somewhat famous. He's actually like a pretty well-known person. And she said, I can't destroy his name. Like the truth will never come out, but it's killing me. And I looked at her, and I didn't say this, but in my mind, I was like, if you want to heal, it better come out. Like, and you don't have to scream it at the rooftop, but you can't lie. You can't sit there and say, oh, my husband was great. Like your husband wasn't great. You're sick because of the behavior that you chose to stay in with your husband. So part of healing, and again, going back to my clear intention of why I believe I'm on this planet, and my clear intention of how I want to live my life is like, I'm here to heal as much as possible and have as much clarity in my life as possible. And with that comes, like, I have to be as truthful as possible, as scary as it is for me.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, Laura. I wish he sees this.
Well, I cannot put it any better than what she said. I mean, definitely intuition is a whisper. But to answer the question of like, why do we think that we don't go with it? Like, we still don't listen to it. I think it's because, well, first of all, we've never really been taught to listen. You know, when we're children, I mean,
Yeah.
they teach us everything, but that's not one of the things. So I think it's a little harder because we have to figure it out on ourselves.
Yes.
Along the way, making lots of mistakes. And so that's one. But the other, it's because we are really scared of the unknown. We are really scared of the future, of what we can't see. And so, or well, I'm going to talk about myself. Like, I am really scared of what I cannot see. And so when a whisper comes to me, and there's always this moment of like, okay, I'm standing right here, right now, and I have this whisper, but I'm not so sure about it because it's such a whisper, you know, I don't know if I heard it well or not. And then I have all this story that's so loud, that's telling me everything what's happening, all the situations, everything is very loud. And so I think I get scared because I'm like, okay, this is what I have right now. If I don't get it, it might just go away forever. I don't know what's going to happen. And so I think sometimes we just grasp for it.
Mhm.
Because if we go with the whisper and we let that thing go, that person, that situation, that whatever go, we are left again in the nothing, kind of just waiting and hoping that our intuition or our faith, or however we want to call it, was right, and that things are going to align, and that I'm going to, get to the better deal. But I think when I don't follow my intuition is because of that. I am scared. I am scared that I'm going to do the wrong choice.
Mhm.
And when I grasp, it's the wrong choice. But then again, it's fine because it's a learning. I mean, it's also part of the process of learning and recognizing the intuition voice so that next time we do it a little better. And like we were talking about before, tests, it's not a test like you're being triggered with people necessarily. It's kind of like your own test. like, oh, okay, I didn't follow it. Let me try again. Let me try again.
Now, are there any incidents or situations where you have been fearful, like cringing, like fearful, holding back, and then you still, something tells you like, no, I will go with it. And in spite of all the mountainous size of the fear, there is something which tells you like, no, go. This is kind of like the most important thing which helps us break through in the process. Any you have come across in your life, anything like that, which you can share it, so that because everybody, this is the place where most of us will back off. When we see the mountain and we see ourselves as just a little tiny little thing, we back off and we say maybe another time. But to say yes, to go one step forward, is the most important moment of our life. Can you?
Yeah, I can think of something. So I've been a little bit like the black sheep of the family, not in the bad sense of like I've been bad or anything, but I've been different. I've taken different decisions. I've come out of the structure, and yeah. And so I was working in London. I manifested this job. I was working in an investment bank in the financial industry, and it's not that it was my dream job or anything. It just allowed me to have the life that I had dreamed for myself. Many, many, many years. I've watched this movie, Notting Hill. I don't know if you guys know.
Yep.
I love that movie so much. And so I remember when I saw that movie and I saw Notting Hill and I saw a blue door, like or blue and red and all kinds of like different colorful doors. I was like, I want to live in a place like that. And that's how it's always happened like me. It's kind of like I see it and I know it's going to happen. And then I forget it and never think about it again. And then fast forward, I'm in London, and then I end up living in Notting Hill in a place with a very colorful door. And it's like my dream come true. I feel like I am in freaking Notting Hill movie. So that period of my life, not because of the door, not because of Notting Hill, I made a lot of friends. That period of my life was really a very good period of my life. I really enjoyed it. I finally was as independent as I've ever been, and I was just really enjoying it. I had a lot of energy. I was just really happy. That's what I thought. Yes. It was like a honeymoon period. Okay, no worries, no nothing. And then I started to realize I'm actually not happy. I'm actually pretty miserable. It took me a while to realize because of my life outside of work, okay? But my work was from 8 a.m. till 6 p.m. And imagine being miserable from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. and then being super happy from 6 p.m. to 11 p.m. or, Yeah. So I realized this is not happiness, because most of my day I am miserable. Most of my day I'm wishing I'm not here. And so this is horrible. And it's funny because once I realized that, it started to go downhill. And that's kind of like what Courtney was saying. Like, it's easier to be asleep, because being asleep, I can just continue on, But once I realized, oh no, there's no turning back. So anyways, that's just like the preface of what I was going to say. But yes, there was this moment where I was really scared because I knew that I had to leave. And I knew that by leaving, this place, this job, there was a lot at stake for me because I was really enjoying my life outside of work. I thought maybe I can find another job. I tried, it didn't work. I also, if I stayed a couple more years in the UK, I could have gotten my residency. And then 1 year later, I could have gotten my citizenship. I don't know why I would want that, but somehow something in my mind was like, why wouldn't you want that? You know? And so I was like, I'm losing all of these things if I decide to leave. And so I was really scared, and I pushed it. I pushed it a while. I actually started to find things like, I'm going to do a yoga teacher training. That's where I did my yoga teacher training, because I'm like, I have to grasp something that allows me to stay here and not go. So even though my whole being was like, you have to get out of here, do something different. And how it happened is that just really quickly, there's a story behind it, but I'm just gonna go really quickly. I lost everything. I went to a trip and I lost everything. They stole my wallet. They stole everything that I had in my purse was stolen. My phone, my everything, my cards. And so I went back to London. That was like a weekend trip, and I went back, and I didn't have communication. I didn't have anything like on my trains to work back and forth. I didn't have anything to entertain my mind with. So I just sat there, and I just sat there and watched the people. That happened for about a week. And for me, I think that was a key, because I disconnected from technology, from being busy. You know, I kind of just disconnected my mind 1 hour every day, going back and forth from work. And in one of those rides is when suddenly, out of nowhere, I had this realization. And I had this feeling that I have to go to India. And never in my mind I had thought I want to go to India or anything, but this is what I have to do. And again, yes, I was scared. There was a lot at stake. There was a lot I was going to lose. And there was a lot also with my family. Like, what would my family think? Because they're so proud of me right now. They're so proud of me right now. What would they think? And all my friends and even my colleagues, they're going to be like, what are you talking about? Because everyone wants this job. Because it was not like a crazy job, but it's a job where you can climb. So anyway, yeah. So with fear and with everything, there was just, like you said, something in me that was like, oh, but I'm still going to go for it, because it just feels so right. And this one was a bigger whisper. It was not like, I think I had little whispers until it was like kind of like a yell, like, come on. And so I went for it, but with fear and everything, but I still went for it, and I don't regret it. There was a process afterwards. There's a lot that came after. It was not always easy, because I had to fight a lot, the expectations and everything that came from the outside and the inside. But that's more or less how it happened.
Okay, Courtney.
Well, it's interesting because I think we get so addicted to our busyness, and kind of what you said, Laura, about, losing our phone. I have this theory. Well, it's from watching myself. The periods in life I'm the most unhappy are when I feel the need to spend the most money. And I've typically made the most money, but there's some sort of like compensation, like I'm making all this money and I'm going to spend it because there's it's like pacifying something within me. And it's actually the periods of time in my life where I've been able to sit in stillness. And this I think a lot of people, so it's like people, wait all year. This is very American too. This is a very American thing. Like we get 2 weeks of vacation a year. And we look for, Americans look forward to that all year. Like, once I get on this vacation, everything's going to be good. And then they get there and it's quiet. And like everything that they haven't dealt with, like this volcano starts to come up, And so I think that's why, again, going back to, I'm fortunate I've been a meditator for so long. And my regular meditation practice is me. And when you sit with yourself, when you have a practice of regularly sitting with yourself, you sit with that crap, and it's like pretty hard to make an inauthentic decision. But back to just to answer the question about a time that I walked through with fear, my marriage was definitely that. I mean, I was really sick. There was a lot of financial ties in that. Like, there was a lot of winding. Like, we'd built this life together, you build something together, and then to undo that, there's unwinding. But I always say that for me, or for anyone, you have to be, for the most part, and you've said this too, Kumar, like sitting on coals. Like, your current situation has to be so crappy that you're like, I don't know what else is out there, but it's got to be better than this. And that's kind of the point I came to my marriage. And I remember I'd actually like meet people that had recently been divorced, and I think in my head, what was your breaking point? Like, what, because I had been like so close to it for so long, but it was also kind of like, is this just a phase? Like, once I get healthy again, will we be okay? Like, is this just a low point? Don't marriages go through this? Like, relationships are like this. But I had just been so sick and so miserable for so long that I was like, I don't even care. I don't care if I have to live in like a 1-bedroom crappy apartment with, no heat in Alaska, like, get me out of here. And so there was some courage, but I'm also a pretty extreme person. Like, I've made a lot of leaps in my life. I just moved across country because I had like a strong ping that I was done in Alaska, and here I am, and I don't know anyone. And so I quit. I quit a job to go to India with no plan. Like, I backpacked Europe when I was 20 with no plan after dropping out of nursing school. Like, I've always kind of done these things. And I don't know, kind of what Laura said, like, part of me believes I was like born with this spirit. And then part of me actually does question if it goes back to that 14-year-old. Like, it's interesting because Laura talked about she lost her phone on the train and had to sit in silence. And then from the sitting in silence, her life changes. And that was actually kind of similar to me. I had this really awful surgery that was really terrible. And I come out of the surgery and I'm enraged and I'm almost like, I'm angry, I'm a mess. And my parents send me away. Well, it was through this, sending me away that I find meditation and learn at the age of 14 to start sitting with myself in a different capacity that most 14-year-olds are. And when I returned home after, a year of meditating every day, I started to miss it, and I would sit in my room and meditate. And so I do attribute a lot of it to that. Like, I've been sitting with myself for most of my life, and I'm fortunate for that. And so to give advice on this, it's painful, but it's going back to like, if answers aren't coming, just still yourself. And they might not come right away.
Yeah.
And it's going to be, hard, especially if you haven't, because it's like a friend that you haven't talked to in a really long time. It's going to have a lot to say and it's going to be kind of a mess. But once it gets through all of the chatter and all of the communication, the mind eventually gets to this place where it's like, but let me tell you what I really want. And then, listening to that is our choice, which is the beauty of it.
See, this is such a wonderful thing. Get to talk to you, and I can keep talking like a couple of hours. Time is something we have to really monitor and be mindful of, and unfortunately I have to end this here. It's almost more than an hour now. Just fast. I have more things to ask and talk and bring, but we have to stop here. It's such a wonderful thing to talk to both of you. And I don't know, this is the first time I have been on the Zoom with both of you at the same time, simultaneously. So thank you for this, and I really appreciate and I really enjoyed talking to you both, and really it's a wonderful thing. Hope maybe we can do a part 2 or part 3 of this some other time. Let's see.
Thank you for having us.
Oh, you're most welcome. And take care of yourself, both of you, and have a wonderful time. I hope to see you at some point somewhere. I don't know.
Can't wait.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bye.